just a broken public phone, a late train, and a decision to walk home. 3 seemingly harmless factors that led a beautiful 26-year-old nurse into the most horrifying night of her life. When her naked body was discovered in a livestock pen 2 days later, all of Australia was shaken by the most brutal crime in its history. Behind that death were 5 beasts with over 50 prior convictions, a cold-blooded conspiracy, and a life sentence without parole that shocked public opinion. This case was not just a personal tragedy, but also exposed the failures of an entire social system. Welcome to the Case Files, where we bring you real cases filled with haunting mystery, told from the most insightful perspective. Today, we're diving deep into the infamous case, the Anita Cobby murder case, the tragedy of beauty in the dark night. This is the most shocking and heartbreaking murder case in modern Australian legal history, where a nurse who was once a beauty pageant contestant was kidnapped, tortured, and brutally murdered simply for walking home alone at night. Part 1. 2 Parallel Worlds. On a humid evening in February 1986 in Sydney, Australia, 2 completely different worlds existed in parallel, and they were about to collide catastrophically. The first world, light and hope. Anita Lorraine Cobby, 26, a dedicated nurse working at Sydney Hospital, had just finished her shift at 3 p.m. on February 2, 1986. She wasn't just an excellent nurse, but had also been a contestant in beauty pageants, winning the title of Miss Western Suburbs Charity Queen at age 20. With her golden blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and radiant smile, Anita was her family's pride and admired by many. Though she could have pursued a modeling career, she chose to follow in her mother's footsteps as a nurse to care for the sick. That evening, Anita went to dinner with 2 colleagues at a restaurant in Redfern. They chatted happily about work and their futures. After dinner, a colleague drove her to the train station to go home to her parents' house in Blacktown, a western suburb of Sydney. She caught the 9:12 p.m. train and arrived at Blacktown Station around 10 p.m. As usual, she planned to call her father for a ride, but the public phone at the station was broken, and there were no taxis available. She decided to walk home, a fateful decision that would completely shatter her life. The second world, darkness and crime. Not far away, at a hotel near Blacktown, 5 men were gathered, drinking heavily. They were Michael Murphy, 33 years old, the ringleader who had just escaped from prison, currently serving an 8-year sentence, cumulative total of 25 years, for armed robbery and organized theft at Silverwater Prison. Gary Murphy, 28 years old, the second brother, with a gentle appearance but actually violent nature. Les Murphy, 22 years old, the youngest and most ruthless brother, previously sentenced to 3 years in prison for 2 sexual assaults. John Travers, 18 years old, local gang leader with a serious history of sexual violence, having sexually assaulted both animals and humans. And Michael Murdoch, 19 years old, Travers's close accomplice. The 5 men had a combined total of over 50 prior convictions for crimes, including armed robbery, assault, theft, car theft, drug use, and rape. Most grew up in environments of family violence, poverty, lack of education, and without proper guidance. Michael Murphy had been sexually assaulted in a juvenile detention center and wrote letters pleading for help from the government, but was ignored. John Travers had shown seriously deviant tendencies from childhood. His father even encouraged him to bring girls home so he could secretly watch through door cracks. That evening, the group decided to go out looking for drugs. They used a white HT Holden Kingswood they had stolen a few days earlier, but the car was almost out of gas, and they had no money in their pockets. The group discussed and decided to find a woman, both to rob for money and to have some fun. They didn't know that just minutes later, these 2 worlds would collide tragically. Part 2. Night of Horror. When Hell Descended to Earth. As Anita Cobby walked along Newton Road near Blacktown Station around 10 p.m., she had no idea she had become prey in the sights of 5 predators. The white Holden slowly pulled up beside her and stopped abruptly. 2 men jumped out, grabbed her, and dragged her into the car despite her desperate screams. Fortunately, there were 2 witnesses. In a house across the street, a 16-year-old teenager with his mother and younger sister heard desperate cries for help and ran outside. The boy witnessed Anita being forced into the car and immediately ran across the street to help, but the car sped away at breakneck speed. The boy and his older brother later called the police immediately. They became key witnesses in the case. What happened next was a series of brutal crimes beyond words. Right in the car, Anita was punched, breaking her nose and both cheekbones. She was sexually assaulted in the back seat, while the others rifled through her purse for money. They used that money to fill the car with gas at a service station. Afterward, the group drove to a desolate grassy field on a cattle farm in Prospect, near Green Park, a deserted place with no passers-by in the western suburbs of Sydney. Here, Anita was gang-raped and brutally tortured for many hours. According to the forensic report later, the victim's entire body had countless bruises from savage beatings and deep lacerations from barbed wire fencing. After satisfying their animal urges, the group began discussing whether to release her or not. But because Anita had clearly seen each of their faces and heard their names, John Travers, the ringleader, insisted they had to kill her to eliminate the witness. He convinced his accomplices that if they let her live, they would all be caught. And then the most brutal act occurred. According to the medical examiner's report, at the time of her killing, Anita was still conscious and struggling with all her might. John Travers used a sharp knife to make a deep cut across her throat, nearly severing her head. That was the direct cause of death. The group left her naked body in an animal pen, then returned to Travers's house with the victim's clothes and burned them in the backyard to destroy evidence. That same night, when their daughter didn't come home, Anita's parents thought she was staying overnight at a friend's house as usual. But when they heard she didn't show up for work the next day, February 3rd, they immediately reported her missing. On the morning of February 4th, 1986, a farmer named John Ridd noticed his cattle gathering unusually under a tree. When he approached to investigate, he was horrified to see the naked body of a young woman with her face completely disfigured by multiple traumatic injuries. The initial identification was only made possible by the wedding ring still on the victim's finger. Part 3. The Manhunt. When all of Australia was shaken. News of Anita Cobby's tragic death spread like a tsunami across Australia. The press ran front-page stories with shocking details. On February 6th, the New South Wales government posted a reward of $50,000 Australian dollars, later increased to $100,000, for anyone providing information leading to the capture of the perpetrators. That same day, a controversial incident occurred. Morning radio host John Laws received a leaked copy of the autopsy report detailing the horrific injuries to Anita. He decided to read the entire report live on air, shocking and outraging millions of listeners. In a 2016 interview, Laws explained, "The public deserves to know the truth. This incited public anger because people knew such murders were happening, and we weren't being provided with full information. Could police find the perpetrators among countless leads?" On February 9th, a female police officer dressed like Anita took the 9:12 p.m. train to Blacktown, attempting to recreate her journey on that fateful night, hoping to jog the memories of passengers or those who might have seen her. Other officers interviewed each passenger and showed them Anita's photo. Initially, Anita's estranged husband, John Cobby, was suspected as the perpetrator because the couple was separated. However, John was quickly cleared from the suspect list due to clear alibi evidence and the fact that both maintained a good relationship. The breakthrough came from a police informant who provided a lead about the white Holden stolen before the murder. From there, police quickly narrowed down the suspects to the John Travers group and the three Murphy brothers, people local police already knew well due to their extensive criminal records. On February 21, 1986, just 22 days after the body was discovered, police simultaneously arrested John Travers, Michael Murphy, and Les Murphy. Gary Murphy and Michael Murdoch were arrested shortly after. Initially, John Travers admitted to stealing the car, but gave contradictory statements about the murder. However, police still detained him for further investigation. Part 4. The crucial evidence. Confession from Miss X. Where did the decisive evidence to crack the case come from? While in custody, John Travers gave investigators the phone number of his aunt, actually his cousin, and asked them to call her to bring cigarettes. This woman, whose identity was concealed as Miss X, or Mrs. X, was an ex-girlfriend of Travers's uncle and had previously heard him bragging about sexual assaults. When police contacted Miss X, she decided to cooperate to punish the criminals. She agreed to hide a microphone recording device in her bra when visiting John Travers in the interrogation room. During the tense meeting, Miss X skillfully steered the conversation, and Travers, trusting her, confessed all his crimes in detail. In the 45-minute recording leaked in 2016, Travers' cold voice rang out. "We were all drunk and she saw all our faces. I said she had to die, and they said, 'Do your job.' So I cut her throat." These confessions sent chills through listeners and became irrefutable evidence. Later, Miss X was recorded a second time when she went to Michael Murdoch's house to obtain his confession. These recordings were the most powerful legal weapons that brought all 5 men to trial. Police were praised for their quick and professional response in capturing all suspects within just 3 weeks. Part 5. The Trial of the Century. When justice was served. On March 16, 1987, the trial dubbed the Trial of the Century officially opened at the New South Wales Supreme Court in Sydney. Thousands crowded outside the courthouse, many holding signs demanding the death penalty for the 5 killers. An effigy hung from a tree outside Blacktown Court as a symbol of an entire nation's extreme outrage. The trial lasted 54 consecutive days with dozens of witnesses, forensic experts, and physical evidence presented. Before the trial began, John Travers changed his plea from not guilty to guilty in hopes of a lighter sentence. However, the other 4 defendants, Michael Murphy, Gary Murphy, Les Murphy, and Michael Murdoch, firmly pleaded not guilty and showed contempt for the court. What happened during the trial? Throughout the 2 months of proceedings, the 4 defendants continuously laughed, mocked, and even jeered, while prosecutors read details about how Anita was tortured and murdered. Their inhuman behavior forced the victim's family to leave the courtroom in tears and infuriated all of Australia. Only Michael Murdoch showed slight remorse, but it still wasn't enough to ease the family's pain. The most important witness was Miss X, the woman who bravely wore a listening device to record the confessions of John Travers and Michael Murdoch. When Miss X appeared in court to testify, John Travers flew into a rage and tried to attack her, but was restrained by police in time. Despite death threats, Miss X stood firm before the court and told the entire truth. She knew that if she didn't testify, the criminals would continue harming others. The 2 young siblings, the only witnesses who saw Anita being kidnapped on Newton Road, were also summoned to testify. Their testimony helped confirm the exact time and location of the abduction. On June 10, 1987, after more than 2 months of tense proceedings, the jury declared all 5 defendants guilty on all charges: kidnapping, sexual assault, and first-degree murder. On June 16, 1987, Justice Alan Maxwell sentenced all 5 criminals to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. In the historic verdict, Justice Maxwell said through tears, "This is one of the most horrifying physical and sexual assaults I have ever witnessed. This was a calculated killing done in cold blood." He also gave special instructions to mark on each criminal's file that they should never be released. This was the first time in Australian legal history that 5 people received life sentences without parole for a single case. Part 6. After the trial. Where the criminals belong. Did the 5 killers show remorse for their crimes? The answer is no. Even after being convicted, they showed no remorse. Other prisoners also considered them targets because their crime was so abhorrent. Michael Murphy, the gang leader, died in prison at Long Bay Correctional Center on February 21, 2019, at age 66. He died exactly 33 years after police arrested him. Former NS ballers Premier Neville Wran had to open an investigation into why Michael Murphy was classified as low security and able to escape prison to commit this crime. Gary Murphy, the second brother with a gentle appearance but actually violent nature, as of 2025 is being held at Goulburn Correctional Centre, Australia's most notorious maximum security prison. On June 25, 2019, Gary was savagely attacked by a group of inmates in the shower area at Long Bay and had to be hospitalized in critical condition. This was the first time in over 3 decades that an image of Gary Murphy appeared in the media when he was taken out of the hospital. In August 2020, he was transferred back to Goulburn after being attacked. Les Murphy, the most ruthless youngest brother, and John Travers, who directly killed Anita, are still serving life sentences at various NS prisons. Both are kept in separate confinement to avoid attacks by other inmates. Michael Murdoch recently outraged public opinion when he claimed he was framed by police and is seeking to overturn his conviction. In a video circulating on social media, he insists on his innocence and claims he was coerced. However, John Cobby, Anita's ex-husband, spoke out strongly against this. He's had 40 years to think about this. Now he wants to be released? I will never allow that to happen. Miss X, the silent hero who bravely came forward to testify, was given a new identity and entered the witness protection program after the trial due to serious death threats. To this day, she still lives with a completely new identity in a secret location. Many believe that without Miss X, this case might never have been solved. Part 7. Legacy of Tragedy. Lessons that Remain. The Anita Cobby case was not just a personal tragedy, but also a painful symbol of the simultaneous failures of family, society, and the legal system in protecting the innocent and stopping violent individuals early on. How can humans become monsters? The painful answer lies in the very society that created them. All 5 criminals had common traits: abandoned childhoods, family violence, lack of education, living in environments of poverty and rampant crime. They weren't taught how to love, didn't know how to restrain themselves, had no one to guide them, and grew up with the twisted mindset that domination was the way to assert themselves. Michael Murphy had been sexually assaulted in a juvenile detention center and wrote letters pleading for help from the government, but all were ignored. John Travers had shown seriously deviant tendencies from childhood, but no one intervened in time. From teachers who ignored Travers' deviant behavior, to police who overlooked signs of violence in the Murphy family, to rehabilitation policies that were merely perfunctory, all created a chain of failures. Social impact. After the case, the Australian government pushed for stronger investment in education, youth rehabilitation, and protecting victims of violence. Psychologists began to be heard more. The youth rehabilitation system was comprehensively reviewed. Protests demanding the restoration of the death penalty in Australia erupted everywhere, though ultimately unsuccessful. Anita's family had to endure unbearable pain. Her parents, siblings, and ex-husband, John Cobby, never fully recovered from this shock. John Cobby spent the rest of his life ensuring that the 5 criminals would never be released. Anita Cobby wasn't just a dedicated nurse, a kind daughter, a girl who loved life. She was also a symbol for all women who have been targeted simply for walking alone on dark streets. She did nothing wrong. She was simply living, simply going home. And that was enough to make her a target for bloodthirsty predators. The life sentences imposed were not just punishment. They were a declaration that this society cannot tolerate evil. The media called this one of the most brutal cases in modern Australian legal history. However, to this day, Anita Cobby's story continues to resonate, not as an outdated lesson, but as a wake-up call that has never lost its relevance. Because people like Murphy or Travers could still be created somewhere in a poor corner, in a house full of violence, or in a classroom where teachers overlook the wayward eyes of a child. We can be angry at the 5 criminals, and rightly so. They deserve punishment. But if we stop there, we will repeat old mistakes, dealing with consequences instead of preventing causes. Crime doesn't arise from a vacuum. It's planted, nurtured, and then explodes in silence when society doesn't pay attention. So Anita's death cannot be just a personal tragedy. It must be a catalyst for change, for society to look at itself, so there won't be another victim, so no other innocent person has to return home in silence and never arrive. If you found this story valuable, please share it so more people know about it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss other real cases. Because behind every crime is a truth waiting to be uncovered. Always be vigilant. Protect yourself and your loved ones. Because sometimes, just one small decision can change your entire life.